When I first heard the whispering, I convinced myself it was just the old pipes in my new home. That's what anyone would do, right? Rationalize. Find the logical explanation. No one wants to admit they might be hearing voices. My name is Daniel Mercer, and 6 months ago, I inherited this house from my late Aunt Evelyn. I barely knew her. She was the family recluse, the eccentric sister who my parents only mentioned in hushed tones. When the lawyer called to inform me she had left me her Victorian home in Blackwood Falls, I was shocked. I'd only met her twice in my life. Once when I was 7, and once more at my parents' funeral 3 years ago. She had no one else, the lawyer explained, shuffling papers across his mahogany desk. And she always said there was something special about you, Daniel. Something she recognized. I was 32, recently divorced, and between jobs. The inheritance seemed like perfect timing. A chance to start over in a quiet town, away from the wreckage of my failed marriage and stalled career. The fact that the house came with no mortgage was an added blessing. If only I had known what waited for me between those walls. The house stood at the end of Marsh Lane, partially hidden behind ancient oak trees that seemed to hunch protectively around the structure. 3 stories of weathered brick and gabled roofs, with a turret on the east wing that looked like something from a fairy tale. Or a nightmare, depending on how the light hit it. The locals called it Mercer House, though my branch of the family hadn't lived in Blackwood Falls for generations. People in town were polite but distant when I arrived. I caught them watching me sometimes, their eyes following as I passed the local diner or hardware store. Not hostile, just cautious, as if waiting to see what I would do. Your aunt was a remarkable woman, Mrs. Holloway told me when I stopped by her bakery my first week in town. Kept to herself mostly, but she knew things. What kind of things? I asked. Mrs. Holloway's eyes flitted to the window, to the distant silhouette of Mercer House on the hill. Things others wanted to forget. It was the first week that I attributed the whispering to the pipes. By the second week, I blamed the wind through the eaves. The third week, I convinced myself it was just the house settling. But by the fourth week, when I distinctly heard my name being called from inside the walls, I couldn't deny it any longer. Daniel. The voice was soft, feminine, like a sigh more than a word. Welcome home, Daniel. I was in the study, sorting through Aunt Evelyn's papers, journals filled with cramped handwriting and strange symbols, books on local history, genealogy records tracing the Mercer family back to the town's founding in 1842. I dropped the journal I was holding, my heart hammering against my ribs. Hello? I called out, feeling ridiculous. Is someone there? Silence answered me. Just the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall and my own rapid breathing. I told myself I was working too hard. The stress of going through Evelyn's belongings, trying to piece together the life of a woman I barely knew, was getting to me. I decided to take a break, drive into town for dinner instead of eating another microwaved meal in the cavernous kitchen. At the local pub, the Blackwood Inn, I found myself seated next to Henry Sullivan, the town's librarian, and apparently one of the few people who'd been close to my aunt. She was a historian of sorts, he explained, nursing a pint of dark beer. Unofficial, of course, no formal training, but she knew more about this town's past than anyone. What exactly was she researching? I asked, thinking of the journals filled with those strange markings. Henry's expression grew guarded. The gaps, he said finally. The things missing from the official records. What things? He shook his head. "Ask the house," he said cryptically. "It remembers." I laughed, uncomfortable with his intensity. "Houses don't remember anything, Henry." He didn't smile back. "This one does." That night, I dreamed of corridors that stretched and bent like something from an Escher painting. Doorways that led to more doorways. And always, just around the corner, a figure in white calling my name. I woke to the sound of scratching, faint but persistent, like fingernails dragging slowly across the inside of the wall beside my bed. "Stop it," I whispered into the darkness. "Just stop it." The scratching paused, as if whatever made the noise was listening. Then, impossibly, came a response. "Find me first." I switched on the bedside lamp, my hand trembling. The sudden light revealed nothing unusual, just my bedroom with its heavy antique furniture and faded wallpaper. But the air felt different somehow, charged, expectant. I didn't sleep again that night. The next day, I began a systematic exploration of the house. If there was someone, or something, hiding in the walls, I would find it. I examined every room, tapping on walls, looking for hidden panels or secret passages. The house was old. It wouldn't be unusual for it to have hidden spaces, forgotten rooms sealed up during renovations. In the library, I found my aunt's research on the house itself. According to her notes, the original structure had been built by my great-great-grandfather, Thomas Mercer, in 1853. There had been additions over the years. The east wing with its turret, the conservatory at the back of the house, the expanded servants' quarters. But what caught my attention was a small notation in the margin of one page. The room in between, still there. What room? In between what? I returned to measuring the dimensions of each room, comparing them to the rough floor plan I'd sketched. And that's when I found it. A discrepancy. The measurements didn't add up. There was approximately an 8-foot gap between the back wall of the study and the front wall of the conservatory. A space unaccounted for. A room in between. My hands shook as I examined the study's wood-paneled walls more carefully. Nothing seemed unusual at first glance. But when I pressed against the bookcase on the back wall, I felt a slight give. Heart pounding, I began removing books, searching for a mechanism, a latch, anything. Behind a row of leather-bound encyclopedias, I found it. A small, tarnished lever. When I pulled it, there was a soft click, and a section of the bookcase swung inward, revealing darkness beyond. The hidden door was small. I had to crouch to enter, and the space beyond was thick with dust and cobwebs. I switched on my phone's flashlight, the beam cutting through darkness to reveal a small room, no more than 8 feet square. The walls were covered with yellowed newspaper clippings, photographs, and what looked like pages torn from journals, all connected by red string, like something from a detective show. And in the center of the room stood a child's rocking chair, moving gently back and forth as if someone had just left it. "Hello, Daniel," came a voice from the corner. "I've been waiting for you." I whirled around, my flashlight beam illuminating a figure in a white dress. A girl, perhaps 12 or 13, with pale blonde hair and eyes that reflected the light like a cat's. But she wasn't solid. I could see the wall through her translucent form. I stumbled backward, a scream lodged in my throat. "Don't be afraid," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "I'm family. You're not real," I stammered. She smiled sadly. "I'm as real as this house, as real as the secrets buried here." "Who are you?" I managed to ask. "Eleanor Mercer, your great-great-aunt. Thomas was my father." My mind raced, trying to recall the family genealogy I'd been studying. There's no Eleanor in the family records. That's because they erased me, she said simply, after what Father did. I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to know. But some compulsion pushed the words from my lips. What did he do? Eleanor drifted toward the wall covered in newspaper clippings. There was a sickness in the winter of 1867. Many children died, but I didn't. Her ghostly finger pointed to a yellowed headline. Blackwood Falls mourns as fever claims 12 young lives. I survived when others didn't. Father said it was a miracle. Her voice hardened. But the town talked. They said the Mercers had made a deal, a sacrifice for a life. I don't understand, I said. Father practiced arts he shouldn't have. Old ways, forgotten rituals. And when the sickness came for me, he used them. Eleanor turned to face me, her translucent features twisted with grief. He saved me by taking another, a servant girl. He buried her inside these walls and told the town I had died instead. I felt sick. That's not possible. I lived in this room for 3 more years, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. Hidden away, a ghost while still alive, until I truly became sick, in my mind, in my soul. And then, she gestured to her transparent form. I joined Sarah in the walls. Sarah? The girl he sacrificed. She's still here too. We all are. All? How many? A cacophony of whispers suddenly erupted around me, voices overlapping, some crying, some angry, all desperate to be heard. The temperature in the small room plummeted, my breath fogging in the sudden cold. They won't rest, Eleanor said, raising her voice above the din. None of us will, not until the debt is paid. What debt? I didn't do anything. Blood calls to blood, Daniel. The Mercer line continues through you. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. The rocking chair's gentle movement became violent, crashing back and forth. Papers flew from the walls, swirling around me in a frenzied vortex. I backed toward the door, but it slammed shut before I could reach it. I don't understand what you want from me. Eleanor's form seemed to grow, expanding to fill the small room, her eyes now black voids. Someone must pay the price. A life for a life. That is the balance. You want me to die? I asked, my voice breaking. No, she replied, suddenly calm again. We want you to choose. The maelstrom of papers settled, drifting to the floor like dead leaves. The rocking chair stilled. The temperature slowly rose. Choose what? Who takes our place? Eleanor's form began to fade. It's your inheritance, Daniel, the true Mercer legacy. Choose a soul to bind to this house, and we will be free. I can't do that, I whispered. I won't. Her smile was terrible in its gentleness. You will. They all say that at first. But the house, it has ways of persuading. She vanished, leaving me alone in the hidden room. The door swung open of its own accord, an invitation to leave. That was 3 months ago. Since then, the whispering has become a constant companion, not just at night, but during the day as well. Eleanor appears more frequently now, sometimes accompanied by others. A gaunt man with rope burns around his neck, a woman in Victorian dress with a gaping wound in her chest, a child with empty eye sockets. They watch me. They wait. Sleep is rare and filled with nightmares. I've lost weight. When I look in the mirror, I barely recognize myself. The hollow eyes, the sallow skin, the trembling hands. I've tried to leave, of course. Packed my bags and drove as far as the town limits. But every time, something pulls me back. A compulsion I can't fight. A need to return to Mercer House that overwhelms everything else. The townspeople avoid me now. They cross the street when they see me coming. Their cautious observation has turned to fear. They know, Eleanor told me this morning, her cold presence beside me as I choke down some toast. They've always known about the Mercer curse. They're wondering who you'll choose. I dropped my plate, ceramic shattering across the kitchen floor. I won't choose anyone. I'm not a murderer. The laughter was like breaking glass. Neither was your Aunt Evelyn, until she was... The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Aunt Evelyn chose a homeless man passing through town, offered him shelter for the night. Eleanor's form flickered. It bought her 20 years of peace, until her own time came. And now it's my turn, I whispered. Eleanor didn't answer. She didn't need to. I understand now why Evelyn left me the house. Not as a gift, but as a burden passed on. A debt to be paid. Tonight, there's a storm coming. The wind already howls around the eaves, and the old house creaks and groans like a living thing in pain. The whispers are louder than they've ever been, a chorus of the dead demanding release. And there's a knock at the door. A traveler, perhaps, seeking shelter from the storm. Or someone answering the job posting I placed last week. Caretaker needed for historic home, room and board included. The dead are watching me, crowding around, their cold presence urging me toward the door. I know I should warn whoever it is, tell them to run, to save themselves from what waits inside Mercer House. But my hand is already reaching for the knob, and the words that will soon leave my mouth aren't my own. Please, I'll say, come in, out of the rain, and the cycle will continue as it has for generations, unless I find another way, a way to end it once and for all. The knock comes again, more insistent this time. I have to decide.